Perfect.
Okay, let me just do a quick intro. All right, so we're back with Laura, serial killer whisperer, and we're on with Wayne Adam Ford again. We had him on last week. How you doing, Wayne?
Wayne, can you... Good, Rob. How about yourself?
Okay. Well, thanks for coming back on again. I believe Laura, where did we leave off last week? I can't remember.
God, I don't remember either.
Do you want to go straight into what we were talking about earlier about Gargioulo and some of his thoughts about Gargioulo?
Yeah, definitely. Because, we were talking about pickerisms, especially Rob, you and I, as well as Ford. But I think it's important because, Ford, you've talked about pickerism. We've talked about it quite a few times, and you've actually know where yours actually stems from. You've actually been able to track it back.
Right.
What was that again? What was that term you meant? What?
Pickerism.
Pickerism. For our audience, just tell us what it is again.
The act of penetration with stabbing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I thought maybe, Ford, could you, shed some light on that for everybody listening? What it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a kind of a fetish, but it involves puncturing the skin or cutting the skin.
Yeah. So how did yours start? Like, where did yours stem from?
Well, I had a girlfriend who had she was diabetic, so she needed shots every day, and for some reason she liked me to give her shots. And she liked me.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I kind of got to where I enjoyed it. That's where mine started.
And how old were you when this was?
I was 17 or 18. She was 23 or 24.
Where did you put the shots in?
I put it in her butt cheek.
Do you think it was because it was like a sexualized area on her body? That's what kind of formed the correlation?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I have a really nice friend. I guess she liked to have it where it doesn't show, and so she had me give it to her. I guess there might be more to it than that. From her end, but it was never really explained to me. And for some reason, it became something I liked doing. And I think it's because for me, there was no actual harm being done, but there was no permanent damage. But that is not the case with most pickerism.
Right. But I could see the correlation forming, when you're that young and you're puncturing the skin in that type of manner where, there's no harm being done, but it's still in a sexualized area, during your teenage years where that would form.
Right. I did switch to other parts of the body later on.
Do you think it all stemmed from that?
I'm fairly certain it does.
Yeah. So when
it's a matter of doing something that was painful but actually wasn't causing any harm. But those firewalls aren't there for most people with pickerism. They mean to cause harm, and harm is part of the turn on for them.
Do you think it's stemming from something innocent like yours, or possibly they had it done to them as children, maybe in a more, sinister way?
Well, I suppose everything is possible. I only know from my own experience, but I do know that some people like to cause pain and actually like to cause harm to other people. So I would imagine that plays a very prominent role in it for most people who have pickerism.
Right. Do you think somebody like Michael Gargioulo, who was, he was attacking women at their most vulnerable positions?
Well, he was a person who wasn't just mentally retarded. He was or not socially retarded. He was socially deranged and quite sadistic. So that's a different animal.
Yeah, it is. Do you think there's anything to him for, attacking these young girls, whether they're getting out of the shower or sleeping in bed or coming home late at night? He blitz attacked them, and he went straight for, the arteries, the main arteries. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it seems that he wanted to incapacitate them.
Yeah. Did you ever, when you shared death row with him, did you ever have any conversations about that with him at all?
No, I did not. He was. I never had any direct conversations with him, but he was a troublemaker. So I heard it causing problems, but I don't generally talk to other inmates, and for particularly, I didn't talk to anybody who might be classified the same as I am.
Okay.
People usually don't talk about their particular situation to each other.
Ford, what do you think, like, some of the similarities and differences between you and Gargioulo when it comes to Pickerism?
Well, he was sadistic, so I didn't think that I was necessarily sadistic. I think he actually enjoyed giving somebody pain, and extreme pain, and harmful pain. I like a little pain myself, so I can understand the masochistic side, and it's a little harder to understand the sadistic side because that's not part of my deal. But it's obvious that it's part of a lot of people's deal, and I think it has a lot to do with frustration and anger, and probably a lot of emotional pain caused by unrequited feelings.
Yeah.
So, Wayne, so you're basically saying that, so what did you experience? I mean, what kind of experience did you have during your episodes? I mean, you said that Gargioulo seemed like he got off by doing that. What did you get, like a dopamine rush after your crimes?
No, not at all. I didn't realize what was going on, so this is really getting a little bit too particular. Like I told the people who mattered, I don't really remember what happened. I was mentally deranged to the point of not really knowing what the heck I was doing. So
let me ask you this, because we brought this. You and I have talked about this when it came to Lawrence Bittaker. Because you had asked what his victimology was, and when I told you, like, his first victim was walking home from church, you were like, "Oh wow." What do you make of the fact that Michael Gargioulo, his first victim was actually his best friend's sister? He grew up in the household. What do you make of that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's so close to home. It's not typical for a serial killer.
It's unconscionable to me, and that is not the normal. That is not the normal SK type of target. Usually, it's a stranger. So this guy had obviously fantasized and created a fantasy involving someone who he knew, and obviously he had no qualms, and he had no barriers in his own makeup that stopped him from doing what he did. And I think that's just I think that's the worst you can be, to tell you the truth.
Do you think he fantasized about
evidently,
his best friend's sister?
I think it's very similar to your toolbox friend.
They both hunted. I mean, he hunted his victims just like Bittaker and Norris.
Right. That's the deal. They weren't merely crimes of opportunity, but they actually hunted.
Right.
Which is it is the grown-up version of the high school shooters. You know, they no longer want to die themselves, but they don't mind harming other people. They want to live through the experience rather than the high school shooter who wants to die.
So the high school shooter, I mean, we're talking teenage years, and the peak age for a serial killer is 27. So do you think we're going to see an upspring of serial killers? You know, we're seeing this wave of mass shooters now.
Because people are healthier, and the gender wars are getting worse, and the reason why you have the young killers and the older killers is because it's when they enter the social arena of reproduction and they're exiting the social arena of reproduction. So it's connected more to the women than the men, but the men have to.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
The men have to respond to the women's sexual maturity, or in the case of the serial killer, he has to have a woman who is within an age range that he feels comfortable with. So he's leaving that age range usually, and he no longer feels attractive to that particular age group. So he can no longer.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
No longer satisfy himself through any reasonable, normal means. Anyways, I'm going to have to cut this short because I'm starting to get really stuffed up.
Yep. We only had one call.
We lost him.
We lost him. He might come back.
All right. So what was he saying? He's getting very stuffed up?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he said a couple of things that are really kind of stood out to me.
Right.
The fact that he's calling Gargioulo a sadist, he's kind of like differentiating himself.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he doesn't think he's a sadist?
I think there's a difference. I think what he was trying to articulate, which I get what he's saying with Bittaker, Norris, and Gargioulo, is, you know, with Ford and a couple of the other guys, like they'll pick up a victim of opportunity, but they're not going to go out and hunt.
Yeah.
Or somebody like Gargioulo, Bittaker, like they're the hunters. You know, they'll go out. They're the ones who are going to be out trolling for 15 hours a day, you know, and doing it almost every single day. They'll go out trolling and trolling. It gets addictive, is what they report.
And there's more planning involved.
Right. And
whereas Wayne's was much more impulsive.
Right. Like he's not going to be breaking into houses. He's not this type that, you know, Wayne is. He's not going to be breaking into houses. He's not going to be following the girls home, watching them through the windows. And what he's saying is the serial killer, the hunter type, which is Gargioulo, which is Bittaker, which is Norris, they will hunt them until they get them. Where that type of it's almost like a lazy serial killer. They're like, if I see a victim, I'll take a victim. Where if they see one they want, it's game over. They're just going to hunt that victim until they get that victim.
What do you think about when he's saying that he completely blacks out I can understand people blacking out during violence, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to do it multiple times,
I don't know. No.
Yeah, I mean, if he had did it once,
Maybe.
I can see that,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening. Like you actually mentioned dopamine. So, when you hear somebody scream, what actually happens neurologically is it affects the amygdala and we release dopamine. And what's crazy is screams can become addictive. That's why people become like horror buffs, but it's always in a fun, safe way. But when you're hearing a real scream, we typically don't have that type of response neurologically. But these guys do. And it can actually become addictive to them.
Yeah. And I can't remember, how many victims did he have again, Wayne?
4.
4. And it was a short time period, right?
I believe so. I think it was within 2 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there was gaps in between, big gaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I can't remember, was he friends with any of the people that he killed?
No, they were all just picked up. Like he was a truck driver.
Oh yeah, I remember the truck driver. So yeah, so it was just, once again, it was random.
Random, right.
And he would pick them up like hitchhiking?
Yeah. Sex workers, hitchhikers. It was mainly sex workers, yeah. Which is typical when you see the truck driver serial killers. They're picking up, the sex workers, the truck stops, that kind of stuff. Pretty typical.
I wonder how many of those are out there now.
God, I don't even.
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's like I'm in Salt Lake right now, and it's kind of like a hub for truck drivers. There's a lot of truck stops. It's like, and I just see all these trucks parked everywhere.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, these guys are crossing state lines like every day.
That's the scary part. I was trying to think in my mind right now, out of all the serial killers that I have interviewed, how many were truck drivers, and it's well past the number I can count.
Really?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, because it makes sense. I mean, it's like they're alone.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their own. They're, I mean, most of the roads they're driving on are, they're in rural areas.
Right. State to state.
State to state.
County to county. I mean, it's the perfect place because, these guys are smart enough to know that, like, police departments aren't checking with each other. They know that VICAP is failing, unfortunately. And this is how they can do it. I mean, they know what to do and how to fool law enforcement, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's crazy. I don't think he's coming back on.
I don't think so either.
Oh, that stinks.
Maybe we can hold on.
Is there any way you can communicate with him?
Yeah.
Like via text?
Yeah.
Because I know he only has like another half hour before the phone shut down, right?
Okay. No, he just sent me a message. He said he's like sneezing like crazy. He's not feeling well. So he might. I just said just try to call back. But I text somebody else, so we'll see who.
Okay. Right, well, I just found it was really interesting that how when he talks, he kind of almost talks and he kind of separates himself from the other killers. He doesn't classify himself. And I understand that when you get into that nitty gritty, it's like, well, yeah, I'm a killer, but I'm not as bad as him. I'm not as crazy as him.
They all do that too.
Yeah.
They all do that. Yeah.
It's such a bizarre way of looking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like you're in the same cell. You're on death row.
Right.
And
right.
I mean, he didn't just kill people. He
mutilated.
Exactly, mutilated them. So it's like, but I guess the mind. I mean, what is that psychologically? How it?
I don't know if you would
They-
you would
they-
call it delusional because I mean they're very self-aware. Because actually, it's funny. Dr. White and I have had a lot of conversations about this when we were going through the study and the answers, and some of them, and we're like looking at some of the answers, and he was like, "Could that be delusional?" I was like, "It can't be delusional because they're very accountable for what they've done and who they are." But it's almost like it's something else. And I had said to John, I go, I'm wondering if we're seeing like peaks of what's called the mask of sanity, like peek through.
Well, yeah, because they diminish what they're doing, what they've done.
Right, right.
I mean,
So it's
they
not
admit what they do,
delusion.
but they also diminish the act.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think what he thought was delusion, I was like, no, I'm thinking we're seeing the cracks in the mask, which is what the mask of sanity is. They're very, because I told him, I was like, they know what they've done. They've told me what they've done in grave detail. This is not delusional thought process, and it can't be classified as that if they're very self-aware of what they've done. I think we're seeing something emerge through the study that is just a crack in their mask. And this is kind of why I designed the study to do it this way, is there's no right or wrong answer. So it's kind of like they don't know how to answer it. And that was the whole purpose of my study, is because these guys know how to answer everything. They know how to trick law enforcement. They know how to trick psychologists, counselors, everything. Correctional officers, they're always manipulative. They're always playing games. So I give them answers where there was just open-ended. You can't, there's no way for them to think ahead of how can I manipulate this answer for what you're looking for. Because I'm like, I'm not looking for any answer except your thought process. I want to know your thought process. And, the answers were surprising. And that's when we started to see like those cracks in the mask.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting.
Do any of them tell you? Do any of them have like nightmares and dreams? They tell you about their dreams, like dreams of like them, their past, criminal acts, and do they have that kind of thing? Does that happen with them? I'm always wondered, does a serial killer have nightmares?
I've asked that question before. No, they sleep like babies. The only time I've ever heard one say, "Oh, I've had nightmares," is one being very manipulative. The majority tell me they sleep like babies. Yeah.
So like no empathy whatsoever.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's probably just fake empathy.
Yeah.
In order to manipulate.
I'm like, you guys give me nightmares about your crimes. How are you guys sleeping like babies? Yeah.
Yeah, sleeping like babies inside death row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's one of the luxuries of being, a psychopath or a sociopath.
I guess so. I guess that frees you up. I mean, it just, it just frees you up of any responsibility.
Well, I should say this. I do want to say this too, because this is a true fact. They do give them very heavy sedatives on campus.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that'll affect them.
Like almost like Diddy horse tranquilizers, literally, just to put them down for the night.
Well, how about before they were incarcerated while they're in? Would they have nightmares after their serial killings?
Not really. None have really reported any. Wayne is one of the rare ones who did. Like he was haunted by what he was doing, and
which is why he turned himself in.
Right, but I don't typically see that. I never see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's a rare case to see a serial killer actually go, you know what? I'm hurting people. This is a problem. I got to, turn myself in.
So he basically had remorse when he turned himself in.
Right. Yeah. We've done a deep dive into, why he turned himself in. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you are, handing yourself over to the police to condemn you to death. I mean, mm-hmm. Something like that. That's not an easy decision. He was like, it wasn't. He goes, but I knew I couldn't stop myself. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I've told him, I find that admirable that you came to that realization and you did the right thing. And there's not many serial killers that ever do that. They just want to continue on until they, are caught or age out or die, pretty much. Yeah. And then there's the ones who just never think they're doing anything wrong. And then there's ones like Gargioulo who just want to pretend they're innocent and play games like David Carpenter until the end.
Yeah.
You really get like a mixed bag of all of them.
Yep. Yeah, it's bizarro.
Yeah.
Well, he's very articulate. He's actually more articulate now than he was that first time. That I don't know whether or not he's just in better frame of mind.
Mm-hmm. That does happen with Ford. It just depends, his mental state at the time too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It really depends.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you always have to take into account too, is like before I go in for an interview, how's their mental state?
Yeah.
By the way, actually, there is a project I'm working on that I'm going to tell you guys about soon, and the serial killers too. I think you guys are going to be really interested in as well.
Are you talking about me?
You too, yeah.
Me too, and our audience?
Mm-hmm.
Are you withholding from me?
I am withholding from you and Cindy, and Rod. But the only person who knows right now is Rob. And Wayne. Wayne actually knows. Wayne loves it. It's going to be something different and unique with the serial killers. It's a new project. Rob is in on it and we're working on it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's exciting.
Unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's kooky. Well, it's good to know. Good. I'm glad you seem. I'm dying to know.
Yeah, I'll tell you about
it. Okay, so with Wayne, I'm really disappointed we couldn't get more out of him today. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? I should say, he did tell me right before we started recording. He was like, I just found out my mom died.
Oh.
So, but he had a really bad relationship with his mother. So I don't know.
How old is Wayne?
Google. I don't know. I don't know how old he is. I think he's got to be.
He's got to be his mid 60s.
I was going to say 60s. Yeah, has to be. Yeah, he's up there. But he had a really poor relationship with both of his parents, but especially his mother, too. And right before we started recording, I was like, "Was there anything you wanted to say to her before she passed away?" Because they had a really bad relationship. But do you remember when we were recording with Wayne? You were filming me and I was interviewing him through the Skype at San Quentin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember Travis, who was there, always brings it up. He was like, that was the most craziest thing I've ever heard. He started talking about speculums, using those on him.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember what he said about the egg? Putting the egg up?
Yeah, no, yeah, I remember. Yeah, I don't need to.
I bring that up because, we were having a conversation because I always thought that was crazy and weird. And he said to me, he goes, I used to go egg picking with my mother. Like they would go to,
Go to where there's chickens.
They had chickens and they would pick the eggs together. And I was like, he was like, it's the only good memory I have with my mom. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. Makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You know what I think we can do is I can tack on. We should probably put, since we don't have him, maybe I'll add that parts of that interview onto this podcast. I think people would be interested in actually seeing him.
Oh yeah. Do you still have the full thing?
I do.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I have the full thing. So why don't we do that? And then hopefully we can get him back on. And then that also will kind of create some more questions. So for our audience, sorry for the short of Wayne Adam Ford live, but we have a pretty extensive video recording with Laura and him, which I'll edit into this podcast. I think people will be interested in seeing it.
I think that would be great. Yeah.
All right. And then we can kind of pick up for next week.
Perfect.
This has kind of been a technically challenged
Day.
day today.
I'll have another serial killer on just in case in the background, just in case we need to get one on.
Okay. What about what was the other guy that we wanted to talk to? That
Marlo.
Yeah.
We can get Marlo on. I can get somebody else on.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do that. All right. So right now I'm gonna add on the Wayne Adam Ford interview, and then next week we'll talk to hopefully Marlo.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll get him scheduled for us.
Okay. Great.
You know, I did an interview with this reporter for The Independent, and she asked me, you know, when I'm getting interviewed all the time, it's the same questions over and over and over again. And she asked me one of the best questions that's ever been asked to me. I'm going to ask it to you. And it's, is there something that you've always wanted to say, but no one's ever asked you the question?
That's really putting me on the spot. I can't think of any one thing because everything's fairly complicated. The whole issue of mental health and criminal behavior and what people call serial killers and spree killers and all that stuff that I've studied it for 25 years now that I've been turned myself in. It's complex. And if they actually wanted to cut it down or even stop it, they could do it. They just have to have the will to do it. But they don't have the will.
What do you think the cause is?
Oh, it's mental illness or spitefulness also. And sometimes it's just pure wanton evil. Who give in willingly to their urges. Those you call selfish people.
Well, you said urges. Did you have the urges when you were younger, or did they start right at the crimes or right before the crimes?
First off, all males have urges and all females have urges. The degree of those urges differs quite a lot. Things that trigger those urges also differs quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of emotional trauma that has been laid on somebody can change the color of those urges. Abandonment can really change a person's ability to connect.
Right.
A lot of
I guess what I'm asking is, were the urges always there, underlying? And with the loss of job and loss of love and your son, did that kind of like, you know, trigger these underlying urges for you?
Say it's a complex puzzle of a lot of things. The FBI has a lot of things right. If you look at the programs and you see how they track these incidents and how they take statistical analysis. But individuals are different. You won't find most of them turn themselves in like I did when basically I had gotten away with it. We were never been found out. I mean,
right.
I didn't leave the kind of evidence, nor would I ever return and give them the kind of evidence that would make me connected. They didn't connect them together in the first place, yet they put them together in a trial like they were obviously together, but they weren't. They weren't connected. They had no connection. Anyways, the point was that some people put up with a whole lot in their lives, and some people put up with a very little before they start lashing out. I never planned on lashing out. Didn't want to lash out. I was just overwhelmed. I don't think most people could have taken as much as I did before lashing out or killing themselves. And that's why I told you that suicide and homicide are very closely related. Once somebody gets to where they don't care about their own lives, why should they care about anybody else's? So even if you don't want to devalue other people's lives, if you devalued your own, or your own has been devalued by other people, and you're not cared for by other people.
Right.
A lot of times, especially males, will get angry and won't trust. This isn't strictly a male phenomenon. It's going to increasingly become a female phenomenon. Can't even spell that right now, much less say it, but it's going to be a female thing, increasingly so, because females are trying to take on the traditional male emotional systems and competitiveness. I'm not sure that their hormones will ever let them get that far, but still, we've seen females lashing out at quite a number, and they're more recently, I think. But I don't look at those that much because they're not related to me in a way that I can understand. So I'm pretty much male, and the strong, compelling makeup of males to mate can become very perverted. They can put in a position where they're in a no-win position.
Well, what age do you think yours became perverted? Or can you sit up, Wayne?
I wish I didn't have to.
Or yeah, if you move the screen a little bit, yeah, perfect. Tilt it. Can you tilt it down?
That's good.
Yeah, perfect. So when did you start having, like, what were some of your sexual fantasies that started when you?
These are very personal things you're asking.
I know. Well,
in a very impersonal place. So at this point, without having thought about that beforehand,
well, we talked about the pickerism last week.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Over the phone.
Yeah.
But I told you where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
That came from giving shots to a diabetic who was my first
girlfriend that you were having a lot of sex with.
She was, hold up a second. She was the first girlfriend that I had repeated sex with. So that made her kind of special. As a matter of fact, she was 6 years older than me and was teaching me about sex. So what she was doing was basically priming my life intimately with women.
How often were you guys sexually active?
I was as much as possible, which would be at least once a day.
Yeah.
I started off, I was 17 years old. She was 23. And she was a college student who was only in the area for the summer break. And so we did it as much as possible. That was my first. But an odd thing about me, even though I don't know other people's sexual history or other people's sexual, I don't know what sexual norms really are, because some people say one thing and some people say another, and everybody acts like missionary position is what everybody does. And they only have sex once a week. For me, I started having masturbation at 7. Discovered it at the age of 7. I did it every time I could. I was alone most of my life, studying things as a young child. I found personal pleasure as a very young child. I didn't hang out with other people. People didn't talk to me. I didn't have, my parents didn't have a personal relationship with me. My brother didn't have a personal relationship with me. Mostly I was in the den reading an encyclopedia, watching shows, or reading reading books on stuff that I thought was interesting. But as far as masturbation, I hate to say this because it's embarrassing, but if I did it 5 times a day, I wouldn't be shocked. So I started early and had done it for a long time.
And a lot. Do you remember what your
I
first?
would say that's a lot.
Yeah. But do you remember what your first sexual image that you ever saw was? Or one that comes to mind, like your first memory of a sexualized image?
Yeah, it would have been Playboys and stuff like that in a collection that was in my dad and his business partner's property.
What stood out to you when you found it, when you saw it?
Well, first of all, I didn't know hair was there. I didn't have any, so that stood out. It's like, oh, they're all hair. Anyway, so, and of course, the boobs, because like it or not, we're attracted before we even, it's not just a sexual attraction. You're born and you're feeding by them. I mean, so there's more to it than just that. You're a woman, I would suppose you would know that. If you've had kids, you definitely must know that. They start rather early.
Well, when you first saw your first like Playboy, what did you feel when you first saw it?
And these are really tough questions.
Not that tough.
They are for me.
Are they? How did you feel when you first saw it?
Well, the same way you always feel when your body chemistry makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So you get a feeling of well-being, a feeling of excitement. And if you're like me with Asperger's, you don't put the two and two together so easily. You see, I wasn't actually aware of my feelings. I didn't become aware of my actual emotions and feelings until I was locked up. And I became convinced by coming on and off the medication that my judgment is vastly influenced by how I feel. But if you ask the person with Asperger's, because you're retarded socially, emotionally, most of them won't know that their actions are motivated because of emotions. But it took me a long time to actually see proof by becoming on and off different medications over time and realizing that certain medications make me want to fight the world and think that I could do it. And other medications make me much more humble. So I realized that my chemical makeup, no matter how it got there, whether it's through life itself or through chemical inducement, affects my judgment and what I feel about the world around me. These are the things that persons who have Asperger's don't realize. You'll see people like that, as I have in my lifetime. They seem very unfair because they want you to do as they say, but not as they do.
Why do you think it was in prison when you started feeling emotions? Just because of the medication, or?
No, I felt emotions, but I didn't recognize them for what they were. I felt emotions and I was absolutely controlled by them. But the problem is that it wasn't until, now I'll repeat this again, I started having instances where I could see the difference. By having chemicals this way and chemicals that way, I could see how my judgment and my actions changed based on how I felt emotionally, either whether it was chemically induced or it was not chemically induced. That's a repeat of what I just said. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you understand it.
I understand it, of course.
Well,
I wanted to ask you, we talked about, how you got hit by that car when you stopped to help those motorists and, had a head injury, but it was, 15 years before the crimes. Did you ever have a brain scan done? Did the Marines ever give you a brain scan done for venture medical prefrontal cortex?
they didn't.
They did not. No brain scan has ever been done.
They didn't. Not
Okay.
only that, when they declared me to have a personality disorder and discharged me from the Marine Corps after being praised so highly as a great Marine,
Mm-hmm.
they said the accident had no effect. But that's completely erroneous because we know now after head injuries have been such a big deal in the VA system because people survive things they didn't used to survive, but with massive head trauma because they used to be the armor they have now keeps people from dying, but they get head injuries. And because the NFL football players, long term damage from head injuries, close head injuries. And what those guys do is over time, they get more and more angry. This kind of thing doesn't go away.
Did you get more and more angry?
Yes,
Yeah?
that's,
Right afterwards?
yes. This kind of thing doesn't go away. It gets worse. And how that's going to be dealt with, I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows. I haven't seen anything anywhere I've looked that shows they can control that. But it has to be understood that that does happen. There's certain brain injuries, and the frontal cortex is probably the one we're really looking at that that controls your executive functions. That makes your ability to make good judgment a little hazy. And so I had it done early before my brain was formed. No telling how much damage was caused. And then I had a PTSD inducing divorce, and my emotions were just out of whack at that point.
What? Wait.
I had no control. I had no control over what I did and what I didn't. I would cry. I would get upset and get mad. I would get in fights. I would drink myself to oblivion. I would race my motorcycle 140, 150 miles an hour down the freeway, just wishing I would wreck. So I had already had some issues. And I asked the Marine Corps to lock me up. And they did a couple of times and they let me go, finding nothing wrong with me. But there was something wrong with me.
What year were you discharged from the Marines?
85.
85.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 10 years before the crimes.
Mm-hmm.
10 years. And then your divorce was what year?
83.
That's the first one, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the second one.
Second one was Max was born in 95, December. And he was 6 months old when she started putting him in daycare. And then she moved him in with some guy she only knew for a month. And I exploded. So I don't know when the divorce happened, and I don't care. But I told her dad that she's doing drugs with people she doesn't hardly know, and my kid's there. I said, I'd like you to handle that. Otherwise, I'm going to go and handle that, and it's not going to be nice. So he went there. That was in 96. So
well, that was the year of your crimes. I mean, that's a big factor.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I'm only going to talk about that stuff now because I wouldn't talk about it back then at all because I didn't want to put Max in danger by having somebody hurt my baby. So the things I never said then, I'll say now because they're very important. They're very important to telling people why my kid ended up a junkie, homeless in Las Vegas. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you have junkie women having kids. I didn't know she was a junkie until after I married her and had her pregnant.
Why not try to go through the courts to get Max instead of, going down the path that you went down?
Yeah, I went insane. That was in the plans, but I went insane. So I came very close to getting it all done just right. One of the problems I had is her father was the chief of Metro Police in the Sheriff's Department.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a clout. And if he didn't want Max to come to me, he wasn't going to.
Okay.
So I got a chance to meet with her, and I did. She did, and I was going to take Max and then wait for him over here. But there was something wrong. She was told by my best friend's wife about how I felt about the whole thing. And evidently, she prepared Max and made him scared of her. So when we were visiting, he didn't want anything to do with me. He wanted to go to everybody else. It became obvious that he was there before I got there. They showed up for a second time after I got there because he was scared of me, and I wasn't going to traumatize him at that point. Over that, I was going to take him and make them fight.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest mistake I ever made was not taking. I don't know how the fight really went. I didn't have the kind of support from my family I needed, but I had bought a Airstream trailer, and I did have a nice place to live, and I also had a girlfriend that would have helped, and I had a good job. So I had everything going, but quickly it fell apart after that.
You know, it's interesting because, your ex-wife, you said you call her a junkie, and she was on drugs, and she had your child, and then all of the victims that you picked up were girls who used drugs and were mothers.
Absolutely.
So
it's not interesting.
It is, because
it's a pattern.
Well, right. I think, were they surrogates for the ex-wife of yours?
Sure seems like it, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Yeah.
So it seems like. I don't know exactly what happens, but I think that makes more sense than anything.
Yeah.
Since I blacked out during the incident, I believe all the times I had blacked out before for these incidents, I don't know what happened, but they weren't complex things that happened. So I think I have a habit, used to have a habit of doing something sexually that probably killed them, and that is that I cut off their carotid arteries while I tried to stimulate them. And I think that's what happened. So that's my best guess. I don't remember, but that's probably my best guess.
Did you always use choking during sex? Like, did you choke your ex just for pleasure purposes?
Okay. My ex. First of all, before she met me, she never could climax. So I found a way to do it. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Now,
it's very embarrassing. I don't want to go into the details, but that was it. And that's what I was trying to do, I believe. And somewhere during the period, you don't know whether
they're dead or alive.
Not only that, you don't know whether they're responding in a good way or a bad way.
Well, when they lost, conscious.
Oh, I know. I don't remember. I don't remember. I can surmise like anybody else can. Mm-hmm. And my guess is probably not any better than anybody else's, really. But they act like it is. They act like they know. They don't know. It certainly wasn't. It doesn't really matter. I don't really give two craps. Now, I thought it would have been executed years and years and years ago. But this really drags on forever. Not that I'm suicidal, because if I was suicidal, I'd just kill myself. I would have done it before I turned myself.
Well, you were the one who told me when suicide does not occur, homicide occurs.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people who commit a homicide, if they are going through mental health problems, once you get to that suicidal and you don't do it, homicide is And people blame people for weird reasons. The young kids that do it, they don't have any real connection to the kids they're killing in school. There's no real connection, except that that's their, you call that. Those are all their peers. That's their tribe. That's everybody supposed to be taking care of them. That's everybody who's supposed to be welcoming them and helping them, but they're being rejected.
Did you feel rejected, or like you didn't have a tribe of people? I mean, you were out of the Marines at this point.
Well, I got to tell you that that's not that easy of a question to answer, except the fact that I have learned over a long period of time that I'm not a loner. My whole life, I thought I was a loner. So I tried to stay alone unless I was with a girl. And otherwise, I was alone. But it turns out I wasn't a loner. I was just lonely.
Yeah.
But you have Asperger's. You don't really know that. You don't connect the emotion with who you are. It isn't part of, for the longest time, I kept telling myself, this is so weird that you have to go to a bar to drink when you can get drinks so much cheaper. Why do you keep doing that? And I would ignore it and just go to the bar. It was easier, I guess. I thought I was just lazy. Wasn't it at all. I actually was trying to be near people. It wasn't getting drunk. It was my goal. It was subconsciously trying to be near people. So these things that took me a long time to realize, because Asperger's makes you retarded in that way. It makes you retarded about your emotions. It makes you disconnected from your own emotions. And you have no patience for other people's emotions because you see people getting, making very subjective decisions that are just, for you, are just off the wall and crappy, you know? You've got to do something. There's no emotions involved. As a Marine.
And you didn't have emotions as a child either, right?
I wasn't allowed to show my emotions. Okay. So I did have a lot of emotions. I loved animals. And I felt great sorrow for animals that were hurt. I wasn't the kind of guy that hurt animals. But I could see how a guy could be mad at everything and would hurt animals for vindictive and vicious reasons. It makes total sense to me, but it was never part of mine. I always sought to have a dog. I was always around cats that I really loved. So I had affection and attachments to animals.
Animals, but not humans?
Well, yeah, some humans. Some humans were kind and nice to me, but not the ones that really make your day, like your parents or your brother, you know?
So you think you're able to connect with some humans, but not,
Here's the problem. I do connect with humans, too much so. I can't control it. I get so attached. It's permanent. I'm still attached to my first wife. It's been over for a long time. I am still attached to her like the day I fell in love.
Did you love her?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know how to love her.
Well, what is love to you?
Love is treating somebody better than you treat yourself. Love is caring about somebody more than you care about yourself. That's love. And I should have done that. But I was modeling my personality after what I saw on TV and the movies and my Uncle Jimmy, who just died about 6 months ago. And I thought you were supposed to be this and you were supposed to be that. Just when everybody was talking about sensitive guys, then I didn't know what to do. You know, afterwards, after she left me, actually I kicked her out. But after that, I was completely out of control. I didn't know how to feel. I just didn't know how to feel. And I felt one way, and then I felt another way. I didn't know what to do. My emotions were just completely overruling everything. I couldn't even make objective decisions anymore. And subjectivity is to me, is a low life way to live. though it is the female lab. And I believe to be a man, you really need to be able to be objective. And I think that objectivity is the litmus test for intelligence.